For an entire generation, they were the golden couple. He was the $6 million man, and she was the ultimate Charlie's Angel. Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett weren't just another Hollywood marriage, they were an American fairy tale. A picture-perfect romance plastered across millions of magazine covers and bedroom walls. Their love story was legendary, a wild mix of fame, money, and impossible good looks. The public thought they knew everything about them. They believed in the myth, but now, at 86, after decades of keeping quiet, Lee Majors' life tells a very different story. It's a story that changes everything we thought we knew about his famous romance. It reveals that the woman he lost wasn't, in the end, the greatest love he ever had. This is the story of his emotional confession, a confession he never spoke in an interview, but one he has lived out for over a quarter of a century. It's the stunning truth about the real love of his life, a love that finally brought him peace long after the flashbulbs stopped. To really get it, you have to go back in time. The late 1960s. Hollywood was a different world, and a ruggedly handsome actor from Kentucky was quickly becoming one of its biggest stars. Lee Majors had that all-American charm, a quiet strength that audiences loved. He'd already made a name for himself as the tough Heath Barkley in the hit Western series The Big Valley, holding his own against legends like Barbara Stanwyck. He was on the verge of becoming a global superstar, the man who embodied the tough but gentle American spirit. Around the same time, a young woman from Corpus Christi, Texas, rolled into Hollywood, driven by her parents and full of dreams. Her name was Farrah Fawcett. She was more than just beautiful, she had this radiant, sun-kissed energy that just pulled you in. With a killer smile and that iconic golden hair, she was a force of nature. She started out with small modeling jobs and commercials, her fresh-faced appeal shining bright in the cutthroat world of Tinseltown. She was the new girl in town, full of ambition, with no idea her life was about to collide with one of Hollywood's most famous bachelors. Their meeting was a classic Hollywood move, set up by a publicist who smelled a perfect match. Lee's agent showed him a picture of Farrah and told him he should ask her out. Lee, already a huge star, agreed. But his first attempt was anything but smooth. He left a blunt message on the answering machine at Farrah's all-girls boarding house. Please tell her that Lee Majors will be by at 8 o'clock to pick her up. Farrah, a polite Texas girl with a backbone, was not impressed. She later remembered thinking, who does he think he is? Realizing he'd come off as arrogant, Lee quickly called back to apologize, explaining that the crazy work schedule on set made it hard to plan. His apology worked. Farrah was intrigued, and she agreed to the date, but their first date wasn't some glamorous, whirlwind romance. It was famously awkward, filled with clumsy conversation like two teenagers on a first date. Farrah, who didn't really drink, ordered a scotch and coke and ended up feeling sick in the ladies' room for part of the night. Lee was left wondering if she was actually sick or just trying to get away from him. But even with that clumsy start, something clicked. For Farrah, it was instant. It was love at first sight, I guess, she later told People magazine. The next day, Lee sent her 13 yellow roses. That sealed it. From that moment on, they were inseparable. As Lee recalled, first moment we were together, that was basically it. She never went back to Texas her senior year. Their romance blew up into one of the most talked-about relationships in Hollywood. They connected over their Southern roots and a shared love for sports. In 1973, 5 years after they met, they got married in a private ceremony at the Hotel Bel Air, cementing their status as a Hollywood power couple. But that was just the beginning. In the years that followed, their fame would skyrocket to a level nobody could have imagined. That same year, Lee landed the role of Colonel Steve Austin in The $6 Million Man. The show was a cultural phenomenon, and Lee Majors became one of the most famous people on the planet. He was the Bionic Man, a hero to kids and a heartthrob to adults. At the same time, he used his power to help his wife's career, getting her guest spots on his show and helping her navigate the shark-infested waters of the industry. Then, 1976 happened. Farrah was cast as Jill Monroe in a new show called Charlie's Angels. It was an instant hit, but Farrah was its undeniable breakout star. Her image, especially in that legendary red swimsuit poster, became one of the defining symbols of the entire decade. The poster sold over 12 million copies, ending up on bedroom walls all over the world. Lee himself proudly said he was the one who picked out that photo. Suddenly, they weren't just a famous actor and his pretty wife. They were the $6 million man and a Charlie's Angel. They were the undisputed king and queen of television, a golden couple shining so bright it was almost blinding. To the outside world, their life was a dream. They lived in a gorgeous French-style mansion in Bel Air, their every move tracked by magazines and TV shows. They were on every red carpet, at every exclusive party, their smiles radiating a kind of glamour that the public just couldn't get enough of. They were, as Lee later said, the Brad and Angelina of their day. The story sold to the public was one of traditional values. Lee was the strong, protective husband, and Farrah was the beautiful, supportive wife. In early interviews, Lee said he'd prefer his wife to focus on their home, and Farrah seemed to agree at first. When Lee married me, he married a very compliant person who just wanted to cook his meals, clean his house and be dependent, she later said. This image of domestic bliss, on top of their massive fame, created a powerful myth. They weren't just celebrities, they were what everyone wanted to be. They were what love and success were supposed to look like. The world was in love with the idea of them, but behind closed doors, the reality was a whole different story. What the public didn't see were the cracks starting to form. The very thing that made them famous, their insane careers, was also the thing tearing them apart. Their schedules were brutal. Lee was pulling 14-hour days on the set of The $6 Million Man, while Farrah was just as swamped with Charlie's Angels, not to mention the endless photo shoots and promotional tours. They were the most famous couple on the planet, yet they barely saw each other. Years later, Lee would look back on this time with deep regret, saying with heartbreaking simplicity, "We never saw each other." He recalled one period where, "I think I saw her 2 weeks in 1 year." It's very difficult with careers like that. This business is tough. The constant work, the exhaustion, and the time apart began to chip away at their marriage. The fairy tale was starting to crumble. One lonely night at a time. They weren't partners anymore, they were just two massive stars on separate orbits. The image of the compliant wife was fading fast, replaced by a woman finding her own power and independence. When Farrah left Charlie's Angels after just 1 season to chase serious film roles, it was a huge statement. She wanted to be seen as more than a poster, more than a sex symbol, and more than just Lee Majors' wife. This newfound independence was crucial for her, but it created new problems in their marriage. Lee, who came from a more traditional background, had a hard time adjusting to his wife's fierce new ambition. Farrah even admitted it herself. During their separation, she explained, "I still like to cook his meals and clean his house, but I'm not dependent anymore. I began to think about what I wanted and needed for myself." She was evolving, and in doing so, she was outgrowing the role she used to play in their marriage. Their love didn't just explode, it slowly wore away under the pressure of 2 lives heading in opposite directions. The final nail in the coffin was another man. And not just any man, it was Ryan O'Neal, an actor Lee considered a friend. The story is a Hollywood tragedy. Lee and Ryan had been friendly for years, coming up at the same time in the 1960s. According to Lee, the affair started as an act of friendship. While Lee was away filming in Canada, he asked Ryan to check in on Farrah back in Los Angeles, thinking she might be lonely. It was a gesture of concern for his wife that turned into a catastrophic mistake. O'Neal, who had a reputation as a womanizer, saw his chance and started pursuing Farrah. When Lee found out, he was stunned. He called O'Neal and asked him to back off. O'Neal's response was ice cold, I can't. I really love her. Defeated, Lee just said, "Okay, buddy, if that's the way you feel." He never spoke to Ryan O'Neal again. For Lee, this wasn't just an affair, it was a deep betrayal by someone he trusted. The discovery that his wife was in love with his friend was the end. The fairy tale was officially over. Their separation was announced in 1979, sending shockwaves through Hollywood. The divorce was finalized in 1982. The aftermath was a painful mess of media attention and personal heartbreak. The golden couple was gone, leaving two people to pick up the pieces under a harsh public spotlight. What followed was a long, sad silence between them. For a while after they separated, they still talked every day, but that stopped the moment Farrah's relationship with Ryan O'Neal got serious. Lee was left with the pain of a divorce and the sting of betrayal. He pulled back, working on shows like The Fall Guy, but friends said he'd changed. He was more guarded, more private, a man deeply wounded by the public collapse of his private life. For over 20 years, the man who was once the most important person in Farrah Fawcett's world became a ghost from her past, watching her life from a great, sad distance. For more than 2 decades, that silence held. Their lives had moved on. But as Farrah faced her greatest battle, one final, poignant chapter was written. In 2006, she was diagnosed with cancer. She fought it with incredible bravery, even documenting her struggle in a raw, moving film. As her health got worse, Lee Majors decided to break the long silence. In 2009, not long before she passed away, he called her for her 62nd birthday. It was the first time they had spoken in over 20 years. That call lasted for 40 minutes. They didn't rehash the past or blame each other. They joked, they reminisced, they got a little emotional. It was a moment of closure, a brief return to the warmth they once shared, a final, peaceful goodbye between two people with an incredible, complicated history. When Farrah died a few months later, Lee chose not to go to the funeral. He said he didn't want to create a media circus on a day that should have been all about her. His official statement was simple and full of grace: she was an angel on earth and now she is an angel forever. It was a quiet, respectful end to a love story that was once the loudest in the world. The story of Lee and Farrah is one of Hollywood's most iconic and tragic love stories. But it's not the end of Lee Majors' journey to finding true love. If this story has moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more stories that go beyond the headlines. Now, let's uncover the emotional confession that reframes his entire life. After his divorce from Farrah, Lee's life looked very different. The intense spotlight had faded, and he was searching for a new normal after the storm. This journey included another marriage, to former model Karen Velez, from 1988 to 1994. The relationship was much more private than his first, and it gave him 3 children, a daughter, Nikki, and twin sons, Dane and Trey. Even though that marriage also ended in divorce, this period was crucial for him. It was a time of rebuilding, of being a father, and of quiet reflection away from the constant noise of fame. He had seen the highest highs of a Hollywood fairy tale and the lowest lows of its collapse. He had learned hard lessons about love, trust, and how fame can poison everything. He was slowly figuring out what he really needed in a partner, not for the cameras or the magazines, but for himself. He was getting ready for the final and most important love of his life. In 1994, the same year his divorce from Karen Velez was finalized, Lee went to a dinner party in Florida. There, he met a woman named Faith Cross. She was an actress and model, and she was quite a bit younger than him. But this meeting wasn't some publicity stunt. It was quiet, unplanned, and real. Lee, the on-screen hero, admitted that he was so nervous around Faith he felt like a teenager again. He couldn't even bring himself to ask for her number directly, so he got a friend to be his wingman and get it for him. For their first official date, Lee took Faith to the Super Bowl in 1995. That day became their anniversary, a private milestone that started a new chapter. There were no flashing cameras, no screaming headlines, just two people getting to know each other, far away from the chaos of Hollywood. This was how Grace quietly walked into his life. The relationship that started that day would become the most important one of Lee Majors' life. He and Faith dated for 7 years before getting married in 2002 in Positano, Italy, at a beautiful hotel overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. It was his 4th marriage, and he admitted he was very, very afraid of marriage, after seeing 3 of them fail. But with Faith, something was different. Their marriage has been remarkably stable and full of quiet devotion. They've now been together for over a quarter of a century, a length of time Lee proudly calls a record in Hollywood. Faith has been his rock. He credits her with completely changing him, saying, "The realization suddenly came to me that Faith had done more for me in the time I've known her than anybody ever did. She transformed me into standing up straight and proud. And he's been her anchor, too, supporting her through the grief of losing her mother and sister within just months of each other, a time he called the worst night of his life. Theirs isn't a love made for TV. It's a real partnership, built on respect, shared pain, and the deep, quiet comfort of a love that's meant to last, and this is Lee Majors' real emotional confession. It's not some tearful, headline-grabbing interview. It's a confession that he has written silently, day by day. For more than 25 years. His life with Faith Majors is his ultimate statement on love. It's the profound, lived-in truth that has redefined his entire past. The world will always remember his passionate, messy, and iconic romance with Farrah Fawcett. That love was real, and losing it hurt him deeply. He has always spoken of Farrah with warmth, remembering the beautiful, if brief, time they shared. But the wisdom he's gained by 86 is his true confession: the greatest love of your life isn't always the most famous one. It's not the one on all the magazine covers. The greatest love, as Lee Majors' life now shows, is the one that lasts. It's the love that brings you peace after the storm. It's the quiet, steady hand you hold when the cameras are long gone. His happy, stable, and enduring marriage to Faith is the ultimate proof. It's the revelation that after the whirlwind fairy tale, he found something more real, more profound, and more lasting. The truest love of his life wasn't the Charlie's Angel who captured the world's imagination, it was the woman who quietly captured his heart and gave him a lifetime of peace. The story of Lee Majors is a journey through the heart of Hollywood and love itself. For decades, his story was tied to Farrah Fawcett, defined by the golden myth they built and the tragedy of its ending. Theirs was a love story for the ages, a warning about the pressures of fame and how fragile a romance can be in the public eye. The memory of their time together will always be a key part of his life, but if you stop there, you miss the most important part of the story. Lee Majors' emotional confession isn't about looking back with regret, it's about embracing the deep peace he has now. His life today with his wife, Faith Majors, is a second chance, the discovery of a quieter, more stable, and ultimately more fulfilling kind of love. It shows that sometimes, the love that truly saves us doesn't show up in a celebrity firestorm, but in the gentle, steady calm of a partnership that lasts. The world might remember him for the angel he lost, but his life is a quiet, powerful testament to the enduring love he finally found.